We are speaking with one of my favorite vocalists of all time, the one and only Spike from the Quireboys, or as I first knew them, the London Quireboys. And so, Spike, as we say here in Montreal, bonjour, how are you?
Bonjour. You're in Canada.
Yes, in Montreal, and I have seen you here twice at the Rialto and at the Théâtre Outremont, and I don't believe you've been here more than twice, or if you did, I missed it, unfortunately.
Well, Canada,
Yeah.
I have been many, many, many times because my son is Canadian, and he lives in Hamilton now.
Oh, wow.
And my grandson lives there as well. So I was there for a long time in Toronto, and we've still got a cottage on Lake Huron in Grand Bend.
Oh, wow. Well, good.
Yeah.
That means you're going to come visit, which means
Canada.
you can when you visit, you can call up a couple of the clubs and do a couple of acoustic gigs and just make it a working vacation. I'm all down for that.
Well, see, on the 12th, I was due to go out, and then but with the route, I mean, I was exempt because I could get in for the being, through my son and everything, and my grandson, but the quarantine thing wasn't prepared right or something, so I wasn't allowed to go. So I was devastated.
Oh, wow.
Because when we were on tour in America, just before we'd been to America, then Australia, then back to America, and then we were on tour, and then it all hit when I think we were in New Orleans, and then it hit, and then we were due to go up to New York and everywhere like that, and we were like going, all the shows were sold out, but there was getting less and less people there, so it was really weird. So it was like, and then what I was planning on doing was staying in Canada for 3 weeks after, because we were due to go to Canada after the last leg of the American tour and do 4 shows in Canada, and everything had to be cancelled. And then I was going to stay for 3 weeks with my son and grandson, but obviously, so I was really pissed off about the whole COVID thing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I couldn't go, basically. So,
Well,
but anyway.
Well, hopefully we'll get you there.
They wouldn't let me in August either.
God. Now,
there's some nice bars in Grand Bend as well. I could have just got up and played a few acoustic songs.
Yeah, and then drive out to Montreal, have some of our food, because the restaurants in Montreal are unbeatable.
I know.
And
great,
hey, I'll set up a couple of gigs for you in Montreal and Ottawa. I have that ability.
I'd love it. I could do that anytime. I love Canada.
Oh,
I was there on and off for the past 20 odd years.
Oh wow, that's great to hear. And I have to say, when go ahead.
Sorry,
I was just going to say
we recorded a lot in Canada.
Oh, did you?
Bob Rock, yeah, in Vancouver. That's why we done the second album.
Bittersweet and Twisted. Oh, that was a great album.
Yeah, we done that in Vancouver, Los Angeles, Hawaii, London, all over the place. So that was the days when everybody had money to burn, I guess.
They had budgets. Now, I do want to ask you about a bit of what you fancy 30th anniversary, but since you mentioned Bob Rock, I'm very dialed into producers. In fact, this morning I emailed Terry Brown to ask him something. Who worked with Rush and stuff. And I've in every interview we always talk about Mutt Lange, but Bob Rock's one of those guys also who's at that level. What was that like working with him? And he's coming off the success of the Black Album. He's coming off the success of the Motley Crue. Did the record company just say, let's go, spend some money, let's make the Quireboys the next big thing? Or did Bob say, man, I like this band, I want to work with them? Like, how did that come about? And then what do you learn from him? Because he's a next level producer. He's just not a knob twister. He's on another plane, another planet.
Well, unfortunately.
Bob's
a lovely guy, don't get me wrong, but people always go, why did it take so long between the two albums? The first and the second. And unfortunately, Bob was such a famous producer and the record company, it was originally going to be Ron Nevison again. We wanted to use Ron Nevison, who had mixed the first album. And then, obviously, I think with Bob being so famous and big at the time, he was the in thing, wasn't he? So it was like every Osbourne and the record company really wanted us to work with Bob Rock, and he really loved the band. But unfortunately, he was still finishing the Black album at the time. So we were in Vancouver for months and months and months before we even started anything. So let me turn that off. And so it was, but luckily the Quireboys were really big in Canada. So we had a blast in Vancouver and all the bars and the strip clubs and everywhere like that, because every time we walked in at 7:00, they used to play us. So it was great.
Well, yeah. And of course, Canadian bars are famous.
Oh yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I first went to Canada. Just to go out for a drink, you go to one of them bars, and it's great when you're a young lad, But no, Bob's a great guy, And unfortunately, it just took a hell of a long time. It took a hell of a long time. We'd had the album written for a while, and unfortunately we had to wait for him to finish that album. So we were just, we were just sitting around for ages, really, waiting. And then we ended up going to Hawaii, then we ended up going to London, and then all the other places. And but it was an adventure, and we had a good time. And then when we actually got the album back, when we heard the album, what we done, unfortunately, it just wasn't us, what we heard. So we went back to London. We didn't get Ron Nevison, but we got a guy called Chris to redo it, who'd done all the Rolling Stones. He'd done the Girls and stuff like that. So we went back in. And recorded a few different songs, and we remixed it as well. So, but I seen Bob. We played with Mott the Hoople. The guys are in a band with Joe Elliott. Joe Elliott used
Down and Out. Down and Out.
Down and Out.
Yeah.
And we played with Mott the Hoople, and they played with Mott the Hoople. I got up and sang a song with them at the Hammersmith Odeon, and Bob was there.
Right.
So it was great to see him, and I gave him a couple of backstage passes to come back and meet Mott the Hoople with us. So,
see, it all works out.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about your trajectory, because your first album, which is what we're celebrating 30 years of, you had a chance to work with George Tutko, who had done a bunch of stuff with Duran Duran and bands like that. You had Jim Cregan, who also did stuff with Rod Stewart and stuff. I mean,
I never knew George worked with Duran Duran.
Yeah, of course he did.
Did he?
Yeah, on Arena.
Oh, do you know what? That's so funny, because I've just remembered now, because I'm playing on Wednesday the 15th in Newcastle, my hometown, with Andy Taylor.
Oh, there's another interview I'd like.
It reminded me, because when he was doing Power Station, George Tutko took me up to the house in Beverly Hills, where Andy Taylor was doing the Power Station, and he had the whole house set up in Beverly Hills to record the Power Station. So that's right. I'm so sorry I forgot that.
Yeah,
he was great, George.
Yeah, unfortunately, he passed away about 3 years ago now, I think it was. He passed away. But
really? You're kidding me?
No. George passed away.
Oh, that's such a shame. He was a lovely guy.
He really was. And the reason I know is there's a band, of course, called Great White. Obviously, you know Great White. They had an album that came out in 2014 or something, and George did the mix on it. And the Great White guys told me later on he passed away. So he passed away in...
Isn't that strange? Nobody told me. I know that I'm not on the internet that much, but nobody has even mentioned that to me. And it's like, because when the Quireboys stopped for a while, he done that band God's Hotel with me. He done the first demos with me as well. So me and George, were always good we just totally lost touch. The last thing I heard was he moved to Nashville.
Yeah, and while I'm looking it up here, it says George Tutko, engineer, lengthy list of rock and credits, blah, 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 Bob Dylan, John Mellencamp, passed away in his home on March 8th, 2015 in Nashville, Tennessee. 6 years ago.
Wow. And I've spoken to Jim Cregan a lot. We've never... That's such a shame.
Yeah, because he was brilliant when he engineered some. I mean, listen, all the guys you've worked with are brilliant on their own level, and well, that's one of the things that I want to ask about in terms of working with Jim and working with George and working with Bob. How much have these guys affected your sound, or were you always just the Quireboys and they just had to capture it, or did these guys get in there and say, "Let's mold you, let's fix this, let's."
Well, I think the major thing that happened was people forget that before we got our record deal, the Quireboys, or the Quireboys as we were first known, right? Because that was the original name, QUE. That's how we started it off, as the Quireboys. We were going to be the Quireboys of the Sea, and then I was working on a building site at the time with Guy Bailey, and somebody said to me, they said, "Oh, you should be called the Quireboys, not the Quireboys." So we went, great. What a great idea, the Quireboys, right? Just to piss people off. And it certainly did piss everybody off because we got banned from every university in the country at one point. But that was when we were more popular. And so, excuse me, I've lost my train of thought. What was you saying?
Well, you were talking about the name and how you got banned from universities.
Yeah, sorry. What people forget is that before we'd done that album in 1989, and it was released in 1990, we'd toured for about 5, 6, 7, probably 6, 7 years in the back of a transit van, and playing any gig that we could get. I mean, I feel sorry for young bands now because that's how you learn your apprenticeship. You know what I mean? At doing all them shows, and we played with we played with a lot of punk bands. We played with any gigs that we could get, we would do. And that's how. So we'd been on tour that entire time. But the major thing is like what you were saying about George and Jim Cregan. We'd been through a succession of drummers,
right?
And I remember Paul Hornby, who was one of my best friends. Unfortunately, he passed away. But he used to wear brilliant clothes, so we used to but he couldn't really play the drums that well. And we used to, so he was, what I'm trying to say is when we met George and Jim, and the drummer that we had at the time, they were like going, "Lads, you're going to have to, I'm sorry, but change the drummer if you want to continue." And we were like going, "No, he's been in the band for years. We can't do that. And then they brought a guy called Ian Wallace down. And they said, "Well, just have a play with Ian Wallace." And Ian Wallace had played with Bob Dylan and everybody. And I'm not kidding. It was like an experience of like, when you play pool with somebody who's really bad and you play a lot better.
Yep.
And
yeah.
It took the band to a different level. It really did.
Well, I'm just looking at Ian Wallace's pedigree. I mean, you look at Eric Clapton, Alvin Lee, yes, Crosby, Stills, Nash, Lindsey Buckingham, Steve Marriott. You just go, I think this guy might be good.
I know. But we didn't understand. We were just kids, man. We didn't understand all that at the time, and so it was like. I guess that's what. If you count up all the drummers in the choir, I counted them all up, and there was about 27 of them. Over the years that we had.
Still less than LA Guns.
Rudy Richmond, our last the Quireboys drummer who played on Bittersweet and Twisted. Rudy Richmond lives in Canada as well.
See, it's a great place
he met his wife on the Quireboys tour bus in Canada.
See, that's the way to do it now. Now, on that first album, because, first of all, I don't know how I ended up buying it. Probably by watching videos on Much Music, and I just liked it But talk to me about a little bit about because you really captured lightning in a bottle when you hear 7 o'clock, Man on the Loose, Whipping Boy, Sex Party, Hey You, and it just keeps going. It's
Yeah.
like a hit parade. Were these songs that you had on those 6-7 years that you gently massaged through the
Yeah.
process on stage?
Well,
Yeah,
something like 7 o'clock.
right.
I mean, 7 o'clock. I Don't Love You Anymore. A lot of the songs, were the first songs that me and Guy Bailey wrote together. And I must admit that when we did go to do the album and we were in rehearsal, and Jim Cregan said, he says, you know what? He says, the one thing that song's missing is a chorus. And we never ever had that chorus. We never had it's 7 o'clock. We never ever played that. And if you listen to the early demos or whatever, the chorus is not on. And then one day I says, what do you mean? There's no chorus? Because we like to keep, me and Guy used to like to keep everything very simple. And he says, no, they'll change it. Could you just try and write it? And I just went in the other room. And I went, well, I picked up the guitar and says, hey, what about this? It's 7 o'clock. And that's how it came about. And it's that quick. You know what I mean?
Well,
so there is. It's always good to write with, to have people's other ideas. I guess when you're young, because you're so headstrong, aren't you?
Yeah.
But
it worked. Yeah. It worked out. Now, there's so much to talk about in the history of the band, from working with Ron Nevison, who of course UFO and Sharon managed you. But I want to know about this 30th anniversary edition, because when I saw it on the internet, I bought it right away. And in fact, you can't see it because we're not on Zoom, but you can hear it. I have it right next to me. It is brilliant. Okay. It is absolutely brilliant. I mean, I forget how much I paid for it, £20 or whatever the hell it was, but so worth it. So incredibly worth it. And it says, of course, totally re-recorded and reloaded. Talk to me about that, because, I mean, obviously there's probably some record company stuff, or you can't get the rights, so you just re-record. I mean, it's probably something like that. I mean, that's sort of why people re-record. But when you get in there,
I think it was a very similar idea to what, because the guys play with Joe Elliott all the time. They re-recorded their albums,
of course,
and you can't to try and get in touch with EMI Polydor anymore. That we were on Polydor. It was Polydor Phonogram. I can't remember now. It's such a long time ago. But that was the idea, to re-record it and then own the rights again, and not really go away from what it originally sounded. That was the whole idea, because everybody else was doing it.
Well, by the way,
Sharon Osbourne re-recorded Ozzy's albums as well, so it was always like she always said, "Remember to do that later on." So it was,
Well, you should. It's the smart thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
and at least we own it now.
For a fan, it's nice to get the current lineup doing this, but there is always the chance that it doesn't sound as good as. But this one's kicking ass. I mean, it really sounds great. So just quickly talk to me about that. When you get in there to re-record it, do you start off with the mentality of, okay, we just got to make it sound like the original, or do you just sort of say, listen, we've been playing these songs for 30 years. This guitar part's better here. This drum feels better here. Let's just make it a new version. Yeah. What was the sort of the working orders as you started on recording this?
That's what we said. Let's just do how it sounds, basically. And then just try and make, not try and make it better, but just keep the vibe going, keep everything happening, Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. How do you approach it as the singer, knowing that you've now got a new band behind you? There's a new drummer, a new bass player. Do they have that same energy, or does that change a little bit of how you hear it?
Do you know what? I don't want to shatter anybody's illusions on this.
Right.
But I went in and sang them all in 5 hours.
Well, by the way, I think that's great.
I didn't, but
you didn't overthink it.
But no, I just went and sang them. I've been singing them all my life.
Right.
It was like, I don't think I've done more than 2 takes of each song. So it was like, how I couldn't. I didn't want to analyze it. I couldn't. You know. And I'm sure the guys, you know, it was all, unfortunately with lockdown, everything had to be done differently, you know.
Right.
So it was like, and I was the last person to be on, really, apart from the backing singers. And so that's how we did it, actually, with modern technology. So I just went in, sang them in one day. Could you imagine all the money we would have saved 30 years ago?
Years ago.
Millions.
But you know, you look at some of the classic albums and you hear the stories of Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath or in my case Poison. Yeah. These bands that record their albums in 12 hours. You know, the debut album was done in 9 hours, and you know, 50 years later, still sounds great.
But the thing is, it's true. When we done the first album, you know, when we were in the studio, they were basically all done in one take. You know, and it was like, let's do another. But everybody's trying to get more out of you, and we're like going, well, the first one's good enough. And honestly, a lot of them it was like that, and it was just, and plus to get any of the band out of the Rainbow was really hard work. So we were just having a good time, you know. And,
but you see, that's it. You got to capture vibe. You know, somebody yesterday, you know, as Charlie Watts passed away, somebody was pointing out that one of the songs started in a 110 tempo and finished off in a 155. And in this day and age, they would go Pro Tool that and auto tune it and fix it and get it all. But that's what gives songs charm. That's what it's supposed to be. You know,
it's funny when that auto tune came out, because I know it's even out now. And I was in the studio once, and they were saying, "Oh, try this, sing out a tune." And I was singing out, and they were like, going, "You can't. If I sing out a tune, you can't fix my voice." Apparently, it splits into so many different, you know, things on the computer that you can't auto-tune it. It's really weird.
But can you imagine?
You must have to have a really.
I mean, imagine if auto-tune existed in the 60s. I mean, Ozzy would be awful. David Coverdale would be awful. Stephen Pearcy, Jack Russell, all your charm would be stripped.
I know. I mean, when I listened back to when I had the first Quireboys album, I was like, oh my God, I sound exhausted, you know. But it was like, I probably was at the time.
See? And as a reviewer, I would take your exhaustion and say, he sings with a sense of urgency. That's what I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a wonderful thing to sing with the Water Sisters and all, you know, and having a real orchestra and all that stuff. It was incredible. You know, I was speaking to like Sid, who was the leader of the orchestra, was like this guy called Sid, and he'd worked with Frank Sinatra and all this, and you were like going, "Oh my God!" You know, a lad from Newcastle, you know, you're going like, "This is incredible to work with all these people in the brass and the brass sections that we had and all that type of stuff." It was wonderful. Personally, I prefer to do it like that. When I've done the solo, you know, other records that I've done, I prefer to go in on tape and do it the old-fashioned way. That's how I done the Frankie Miller album that I done, and. But it, you know, a lot of people say, "Oh, you can't tell the difference. You can't tell this, you can't tell that." But I can, because I'm old.
Yeah, well, I can tell a difference as well. I'm going to ask you the question that you've been asked probably 100 times, but I've never read the answer anywhere, and I'm just curious. You were the London Quireboys to me. Why did we drop London? And I know you've probably been asked this 1,000 times, but I've never heard your answer.
Well, the reason was when we went to America,
right?
America and Japan and Canada.
Yes.
There was in Australia. There's a band in Australia called the Quireboys, spelled CHOIR.
Right.
And they had been on the Billboard charts before us. So, and the rule was 30 years ago. The rule was that who had ever been on the Billboard charts, because you couldn't copyright the name or anything like that.
Sort of the unwritten rule, yeah.
So I think Sharon offered them something like $120,000 to change the name.
Wow.
And they wouldn't change the name. And so we came to agreement that we'd be called. We didn't want to be called Quireboys UK. There was the same thing like the Mission UK and bands like that.
FM UK. I don't know if you're FM UK.
So they called the agreement was. So we said we'll call ourselves the none of us are even from London. I don't know why that came about, but it was Guy Bailey's idea. He said let's call ourselves the London Quireboys instead of Quireboys UK, and they were going to be called the Choir in Europe. And then about a year later, I bumped into one of the guys out of the band from the Australian Quireboys, and they were like, God, man, I wish I took the money. I says, well, he says, the record company just dropped one. So we really didn't need to do that. And we'd just been to Australia. We didn't even use the London. And they're still playing. So, it was basically radio and stuff like that, so people wouldn't know. But it was,
Gotcha.
it was entirely up to Sharon. She sorted all that out. But it was a shame. But we don't really use. Even when we play in America now, we don't use the London. When we've been back and done the rock cruises and everything, it's just the Quireboys now.
I know, but I'm old and I bought the first album, and I still call you the London Quireboys.
Well,
and
that's good, yeah.
And I'm looking at the 30th anniversary right in front of me, the new version, and it seems naked without the London there. But that's okay.
Well, I'm sure we'll get some especially done for you.
Yeah, I'll get a Sharpie.
Maybe we might have to do that in abroad. I don't know still, but we haven't released anything out. I don't know how it works now. But.
As silly as it may sound, in this day and age of interesting merchandising, you might want to make like 250 available signed editions and sell them for double the price, and I'm sure you'd sell out just for shits and giggles.
Okay, yeah.
Because fans like the little knickknacks and
thing. The original thing.
And this might sound silly, but I bought this, and if you did that, I would rebuy it because just for shits and giggles, I would just rebuy it.
That's good.
So
yeah.
How was it working with Sharon? There seems to be two camps. A, she's brilliant and she helped us greatly, or B, well, we know how B goes. Are you A or B? Was she brilliant?
Sorry, I can't hear what you said. Say that again.
Working with Sharon Osbourne.
Oh, Sharon.
Yeah, there's two camps on Sharon. The first camp is she was great. She was in our, she fought for us. She got us great stuff. And then there's the second camp that says, are you in the camp A or are you in camp B or a little bit of both?
Well, you gotta remember.
Right.
I think I was about 19 or 20 at the time, or 20, 21. I can't remember around that time. But we had every manager in the world after her, And the one thing about Sharon was at the time she only managed Ozzy. Oh, sorry, and Lita Ford. And with every other manager seemed to have about 10, 15, 20 acts. You know what I mean? And they're all American. So it was a bit like, we're going to get lost in this, And Sharon was so keen, and she said the right things at the right time, and she got us a great deal and made us, it was really good. So I can only thank her because of what we. I mean, if it hadn't been for Sharon, we could have ended up touring America for years, but we ended up touring all over Europe, everywhere. And that's been our bread and butter since we reformed, is playing Europe and everywhere like that. I mean, we play America, once every few years, but not to the extent of what we do in Europe and Scandinavia and everywhere else in the world. So it was hard work, but we've been carrying on from me and Guy Bailey had been carrying on from when we had already been playing the clubs and playing everywhere. And so it was like me and him had never, ever really stopped, and that was why when we got onto the second album, and I mean, we didn't have even anywhere to live, we were like, this has to stop at some point because we were nearly killing ourselves, But, so, Sharon was, I can't complain about Sharon. And then after Sharon, there was Steve Barnett and Stuart Young, who'd done AC/DC. And then, that was our... But Sharon was with us for a long time, so...
Well, listen...
Hey, and by the way, if you think I'm going to say anything bad about her, you've got another thing coming, because I know what she can do.
Yeah, we all know what she can do. But no, she...
Yeah,
listen, if it wasn't...
You'll have to wait for the book.
the posthumous book, right? The posthumous book.
Where I tell the real truth.
Well, listen, I'm sure that her connections didn't hurt on the first album, because here we are 30 years later still talking about it.
Well,
and
do you know what? We were on tour in America.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll never forget, we were on tour with LA Guns in America, and in them days you didn't have mobile phones, and I used to call home every 2 or 3 times a week. And my dad said to me, he says, the Rolling Stones are playing St. James's Park, which is in Newcastle, where I'm from. And I was like, you're kidding me? And I was like, oh, we're on tour in America around that time. So I rang up Sharon. I said, Sharon, hey, could you have a look to see if we could play with the Rolling Stones at St. James's Park? Because that would be my dream come true. Because, you were huge football fans in Newcastle, And she pulled it off, man. She pulled it off. We were playing in New York. We flew in from New York, and we were there for 2 days. Flew straight back on, played with the Rolling Stones. We actually done a video that day as well for There She Goes Again, and a video that I've never seen, by the way. And
what happened to it?
Then, do you know what I done? There's a few videos that have been lost. The first video, we done 3 videos for 7 o'clock. And the first video was deemed MTV wouldn't show it. So we had to go back and do another video. But that video was, there was a lot of porn stars. And basically what we done was we had and strippers, as you do when you're in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. And that video was basically a party. A massive, massive party. There was nobody paid to come. It was all people from the Rainbow and just people in Hollywood at the time. And it was the most raucous video you've seen by a band at that time. And unfortunately, it was like, you can't use that. You can't use that. MTV won't play that.
But fast forward to 2021, and if you're looking for some new product to put out, the video collection is...
Yeah, I'd love to see that video.
Yeah, there's the next project. Put together a DVD with all the unreleased videos.
Yeah,
Well,
if I could, the thing is that none of us have seen it yet. Well, we haven't seen it since it was done, so I don't know where the hell it is, and nobody can find it. Plus, the There She Goes Again video, nobody can find that either. So, there's a lot of stuff out there that nobody knows where it is.
It's amazing.
So,
lost in the EMI vaults. Last album, Amazing Disgrace, came out in 2019. Another great record with a great sound. Where are we in terms of new records? Because every time you put one out, it's just a moment of joy. So lockdown and not touring probably slows the process down a bit. But
yeah.
Do we see something in 2022, perhaps?
I would think so. I mean, the thing is, we've been pretty good at releasing stuff quite frequently over the past few years, and it's just the Quireboys tour so much. It's so hard to get stuff in, And then, but when we do it, it doesn't take long, and it's very. I mean, the last time we did at Rockfield, which is a wonderful studio where, obviously it's a very famous studio where with, like Queen and Led Zeppelin. I mean, everybody's recorded there. It was the most, Kingsley owns it. It was the first live-in studio in Wales. And so that's where we went to do that. And it was an amazing time. It only took us like 10 days, I think, to do that album. And we actually we wrote it and recorded it in 10 days. So we didn't actually have any songs because we'd been on tour. So we actually wrote the songs when we were there, which was quite... Yeah. But when you've got to do something, you do it, you know?
And that's what I like. I don't like albums that take 14 years to put out. I like that old Black Sabbath, we got 9 hours, let's punch it out. I love that. That's...
Well, I've got friends, you know, I've got lots of friends who are musicians and who write all the time, you know? And I think that when me and Griff write, it's more like we save everything up and then just go in and say, hey, what, you got anything? Yeah, I got, and then we do it like that, you know, and it seems to always work, you know. So it's not like I don't sit around writing songs every day, you know what I mean? But you do keep notes of things, you keep things in the memory bank and go like, oh, that'd be a good title, this would be good, you know what I mean? So I did it. So if you tell me I've got to go in the studio next week to do an album, I'll have an album. I'll record that. I'll record an album for you. You know what I mean? That's how it's. That's how we seem to do it.
Well,
you know,
that's how it's done.
It's always worked. Same with me. Well, you know, I've only written with Guy Bailey and Guy Griffin, 2 guys, and it always seems to work out really good. So that's the way the Quireboys have done it all the time, anyway.
Well, you keep doing it here. I'm just going to ask you this one last question. The person that connected us today said to me, he said, listen, ask Spike about the solo album, It's a Treat to Be Alive, which, by the way, I did buy, and I still have downstairs. Okay. He says it's his favorite album ever. So just talk to me about that and doing solo albums, because... You know, you're in the Quireboys. It's you and you know you're like the one original member or one of two. Why do solo albums? Why not just call them Quireboy albums? Why differentiate?
Well, at the time,
right,
we weren't playing. The Quireboys weren't playing.
Okay,
and I would had a break or something like that. I can't. Do you know what? No, actually, I'm getting totally confused here. What happened was, I came back from America, and I'd been offered this solo deal, and the Quireboys weren't playing at all, and so I met up with Paul Guerin and Keith Weir. Me and Paul wrote a few songs together. We went in the studio, and Keith Weir, and that's how Paul and Keith ended up being in the Quireboys through that album. There was So that's how they ended up touring with us and being in the Quireboys through my solo album. And Michael Lee was playing on the drums, who ended up playing in the Quireboys, who played with Page and Plant and Little Angels and everybody. And you know, it was great. That was done in Newcastle at a studio, and we it was such a great. You know, we all got on so well that when the Quireboys, you know, reformed and everything, that was the band that we used after This Is Rock and Roll. So that's how it all came about.
Well, it
Paul and Keith
paid dividends because band's sounding good and that album's good.
That's how it all came about, actually. Yeah.
I will end on this. I interviewed Bonnie Tyler about a month ago.
Are you kidding me? That's brilliant.
Oh, she was great. She was great. And it's funny because she spent her time telling me about how Def Leppard's Hysteria is her favorite album of all time, and how she drives around in the car listening to Hysteria. And I just never pictured Bonnie Tyler being a huge Def Leppard fan. But hey, here we are. Here we are.
But Bonnie is one of the most wonderful women you could ever wish to meet. You know, she's absolutely brilliant. It was funny because when we done the duet together, we done the duet on 100% Pure Frankie Miller.
Yep, Fortune. Dedicated to Andy Fraser. Let's not forget.
Well, Andy Fraser played on it.
Yep.
It was Andy Fraser and Simon Kirk, and
oh wow,
I think Ronnie Wood's on that one as well.
Oh wow, that I did not know.
Ronnie's on that. Ian Hunter's on it playing the piano.
Oh wow.
I think. Well, and but it was funny because when I first done the song, I took it to my mum, when I, the first, the first copy of it, and I says, hey, Mum, what do you think of this? I says, because my mum didn't realize who Simon Kirke was, or Andy Fraser, or she barely knew who Ronnie Wood was, or she never, she didn't know who Ian Hunter was, but she knew who Bonnie Tyler was. And I says, Mum, have a listen to this. I says, it's me singing with Bonnie Tyler. And she went, oh, this is amazing. This is brilliant. She went, which bit's you?
That's funny.
And you know what? When I went back mixed the copy, I was getting a bit confused as well at certain points.
But it's a great sounding song. It's like
do you know what, that song is played at more weddings in the UK than I think that Robbie Williams' Angels at the minute. It's a very popular song that everybody plays at the weddings all the time. And I've just been on tour from lockdown.
Yep. I
went out and played some acoustic shows with me and a friend of mine, Chris Alman.
Yeah.
To limited audiences because of the lockdown, where you have to sit at a table and everything like that. And I've been playing that song every night, and it is the most simplest but most beautifulest song that anybody could wish to hear. It's so wonderful, and it was such an honor to have her sing it with me.
Yeah, and I'll remind folks, go to YouTube right now and find Spike doing Fortune featuring Bonnie Tyler, and it's on Bonnie Tyler's official YouTube, and I'm sure you can just find another.
Yeah.
But I posted that link on my socials and I shared it with folks, and the response I got was, "Wow, didn't know this existed. Absolutely fantastic. This is thank you for sharing," and people loved it. The reaction was all positive.
It's such a shame that album wasn't promoted properly, because it was. I think it's one of the best sounding, and it's all songs by Frankie Miller.
Yeah,
and but it's songs that nobody had ever heard. During that time when I done It's a Treat to Be Alive, I covered a couple of Frankie Miller songs. And then through that, Annette Miller, who's Frankie's wife, she found out, and then she started coming to Quireboys shows. We became really good friends. And she said, I've got like about 300-400 songs that Frankie has never released. And from the 70s up until the 90s. And I was like, you're kidding me? And she went, some songs are finished, some aren't. And I says, well, she says, do you want to have a listen to them? So I went through all these songs, and I had to pick like 15. I think I'd done 20, but only 15 on the album. But nobody had ever heard these songs before. They'd never been released, and that was the whole idea. I'd love to do another album. There's about 4 or 5 albums there to do of songs that nobody's ever heard by Frankie Miller. And, actually that was the first time because I through modern technology, right, how I recorded that album, I did it with a click, just me and an acoustic guitar. And then I sent that to Simon Kirke in New York. And he played the drums on it. And I got them back. And then I sent that off to Andy Fraser in Los Angeles. And he played the bass on it. And it was the first time in 40 years they played together. And it was such a shame, because we were actually gonna tour this. We played live at Sweden Rock. Sorry, I'm digressing, but I'm just saying that how we done that album it was through modern technology that we all played. Everybody just sent me the stuff back on the computer, and then what I done was I went into Rockfield Studios and I took it all off the computer and put it all.
And at this point, the phone connection dropped, but let's get Spike right back on the phone and let's continue this conversation. Yeah.
What happened was we decided, I got offered to do, so it was going to be Simon Kirke.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was, it was originally, Frankie's band was called Frankie Miller's Full House. So Luke Morley from Thunder played on the album. Ronnie Wood played on it. Hold on.
Luke Morley plays on this?
Yeah, he played.
Damn.
Plays on it. Yeah. And
Luke
then
Morley is one of the most underrated guitarists in the history of rock. That motherfucker can play.
Oh, he's brilliant. I'm playing with Luke on in a couple of weeks.
Thunder is one of my favorite bands of all time, and
Yeah,
you don't hear a lot of Canadians say that, but such a great band.
I actually got up to sing with them in Canada.
Really?
Luke's one of my oldest friends. I'm playing with him on the 15th of September in Newcastle for a Teenage Cancer Trust with Andy Taylor from Duran Duran, and we're doing a gig there. But so what happened was when I released the album, the guy who runs Sweden Rock, he asked if we would do a show in Sweden Rock. And so at the time, Simon Kirk, Andy Fraser, Luke Morley, and Mark, who's the piano player in Magnum, that was the band. But then we had this hope. So we were going to do Sweden Rock and then 12 shows around it in the UK and Europe. And unfortunately, 2 weeks before the Sweden Rock show, Andy Fraser died. So we had to get a stand-in bass. But we were like, should we continue the tour on it? And we said, let's just do Sweden Rock in one show in England. And Luke Morley played. And actually, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can absolutely hear you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and so what we done was, luckily, it was all filmed. The recording of it, the rehearsals of everything, like a documentary, and the Live at Sweden Rock is going to come out at the end of the year. So it's called Spike's Free House instead of Frankie Miller's Full House, because we're playing half free songs. So we do like My Brother Jake, all the free hits, All Right Now, everything like that, and then we do half Frankie Miller because it was, because it was going to be two members of Free for the first time in 40 years, and and obviously the Frankie Miller stuff. So it was a wonderful day. It was such a shame that he passed away, but we went ahead and done Sweden Rock in the end, and it's recorded, and it's going to be out as a live album at the end of the year.
Oh wow! Now is it is it going to be a Spike live album, or is it called something else because of all these other players?
It's called Spike's Free House.
Oh.
That's the name of the band for the evening, Spike's Free House.
You're going to start costing me a lot of money.
Yeah, because Frankie Miller's band was called Frankie Miller's Full House. But since we had two members of Free, let's call it, and we're playing half Free songs, I thought, let's do a twist on it and call it Spike's Free House. You see what I mean? Yeah. So that's coming out later. And, Luke does some great guitaring on it. I've known Luke since we started the Quireboys. He was in Terraplane.
I remember Terraplane.
We've been, and Danny, we're all very good friends and been together for a long time.
Well, I've got to say, All the Right Noises, their latest album, is so incredibly good. And I had a chance to interview Danny for it, and it's just...
Oh, great.
Yeah, Danny's great, and he is, and he's one of the greatest rock singers of all time. And what I find remarkable about Danny is that he actually sounds better today than he did on Backstreet Symphony. And that's not an insult. He sounded great on Backstreet Symphony. But his voice it's got such textures now and such, he's
like a fine wine. He's like me.
Yes, absolutely.
We all get better as we get older.
Well,
the thing is, we didn't die. That's the thing.
And you know what? I think part of what it is with UK bands is that you didn't spend your time like a lot of the American 80s bands screaming at the top of your lungs and hitting octaves that were off the chart. You always sort of kept it in check, and I think your voice is preserved because of it, because you all sound great as you've gotten older.
There's a lot of bands out there now that detune and do all that stuff, and I was like, the day that I detune, then I'm packing in. It's like, keep it, Chuck Berry, Mick Jagger doesn't detune, you know what I mean? You got to keep it going like that. I can't see it. If it was up to, if that happened to me, then I'd just pack in, Yeah. But But no, I love Thunder. We've played so many shows together over the years. You know, they've got up and played with us. Well, I've got up and sang with them, and we've done a lot of things together. And on Wednesday, the 15th of September, I'm playing with Luke acoustically, and then Andy Taylor from Duran Duran's doing a gig for Teenage Cancer Trust in Newcastle at Wyland Brewery. So put that out there.
Oh, that I'll put out there. And I've actually interviewed Luke once, and it was for, I guess it was the Rip It Out album, or I guess it was the last one before this one.
Right.
But feel free to give Andy Taylor my number, because I'd love to interview him. Only met him once in 2005, I guess it was.
Of course I will. I'll see him in a couple of weeks. I'll get his number now.
Oh,
or whatever.
Yeah, well, I'd love to interview him. That would be great. And by the way, I just ordered your 100% pure Frankie Miller. There you go.
Okay.
It says, according to Amazon, it says estimated delivery September 8th. So there you go. I took the time to put my money where my mouth is, and I bought the son of a gun. So there you go.
I hope you enjoy it. Some of the songs,
don't care. I'll enjoy it.
But I would love to do another album of that. It's so cool.
And I'll tell you why I'll enjoy it. Because for me, it's all about the voice. You know, I love Joe Elliott. I love Spike. I love Danny Bowes. I love Steve Lee of Gothard. If it's got the voice, regardless of the music behind it, it can have a million mistakes. If the voice is there, I'm in.
Have you never listened to Frankie Miller?
Well, of course, in passing, like everybody else, you know, you see it on TV and stuff. But I don't have Frankie Miller a collection at home.
He is one of the greatest singers of all time. He's Rod Stewart's favorite singer.
Well,
Rod is. Rod Stewart goes that he's the greatest singer of all time, and I think that Danny. I think everybody if you're a singer, everybody goes he was one of the greatest singers of all time.
I'm gonna have to go spend more attention to him, because I've heard the name in passing, and I've seen it in movies and TV, but I've never sort of sat down and studied.
Plus he's also one of the greatest songs. He wrote so many songs for country. Unfortunately, Frankie had a brain hemorrhage.
Right.
And that's why I ended up doing this album, because Frankie can't really talk anymore, and he can't sing anymore, and that's the reason that I done the album. He's still alive, and everybody can't sing anymore. So it was such an honor for me to get for Annette to say, "Hey, would you like to do this? Do these, pick these songs, do this whole thing," and it was wonderful, And that's how I sang with Bonnie, because Bonnie was such a good friend of Frankie's as well.
And Bonnie, just like you, was such a terrific interview. She was so incredibly gracious and funny, and
are you still recording this?
I turned it back on to hear the story about.
Good.
Yeah. I did.
Tell you, I just think Bonnie is because I have been around every rock band in the world. From Bon Jovi to the Stones to everybody, but I think Bonnie could outdrink all of us, to tell you the truth.
I wouldn't be surprised, but she's just such a lovable lady. She's great. I love her. On that, as we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. And folks, 30th anniversary, totally re-recorded and reloaded, a bit of what you fancy, available now, and it is money well spent.
If you mention stuff like that, I've just released an album called So-Called Friends with a DVD of an evening of Frankie Miller, which I recorded during lockdown. There's a DVD of me playing songs by Frankie Miller off my album, 100% Pure Frankie Miller, live on a DVD. And there's also the So-Called Friends. It was originally released in about 2004 or something, but I got the rights back and I've re-released it because it was never really out there. I don't think anybody knew about it. And there's about 3 or 4 songs on that at Frankie Miller's as well.
Oh, wow.
So
Look at
that's
that.
out now. It's called So-Called Friends. it'll be on my website, spikequireboys.com.
.com. Right. I will direct everybody to that.
The album I'd done in lockdown, which was the Late Night Songbook, which is just me playing the acoustic guitar, and also has a DVD with it, me playing this stuff. So
now,
check it out.
Is that on Off Your Rocker, or is that on the Spike website?
It's on the Spike website. It's through Villains Merch, which is you can find it on spikequireboys.com.
All right, I will send everybody over to spikequireboys.com. We'll pick all that stuff up. And thank you for 30 years of great music. And that debut is just one of the greatest debuts. It's fun. That's what I like about that. It's just fun. You can be in a bad mood, and then you put that on and you go, I'm okay now. And and if you can help me set up an Andy Taylor interview, that would be fantastic as well.
I'll sort that out tomorrow for you.
Thank you.
I'll save you. Is this your save it in here? Yeah.
You can save
your number.
Yeah.
Is this the number to call you on?
Well, this is the Skype number. I can give you my number if you want, or if you just go mitch@mitchlafon.com. That's my email, but that's
Okay. Well, if you text me your phone number, I'd rather text.
Oh.
Luckily, all my family lives in Canada, so I can call you for free.
Oh, there you
I've
go.
got that thing on the app on my phone.
Let me see.
So I can text you.
I've never texted England. Let me see if I dial in the. Oh, actually, I have texted before. Look at that.
Do you have an iPhone?
I do. Let me see here.
But it's free. It's free to text on iPhone.
Let's see here. I'll type this number in and I'll just say hello and I'll get it. I'll send you a text and we'll see. Because I mean, Andy is the everybody thinks of Andy as the guy from Duran Duran, but his because he is. But the production that he's put together on Backstreet Symphony,
he produced his first album. Yeah, that's why they're playing. That's why we're all playing together in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Sorry.
Yeah, and of course his album Thunder and his stuff beyond Girls on Film and Rio, he's just brilliant. I mean, there's no other word for. He's just brilliant. That's
he's
Andy.
A very talented guy. He's from the same place as me as well. He's from Newcastle as well.
Yeah, and he's got a solo album coming out later this year. Whoops.
Yeah. He does, yeah.
There you go.
The guy who used to manage me, in Newcastle, not the Quireboys, but me, who unfortunately has passed away, managed Andy Taylor as well. It's because we're all from Newcastle. We all stick together.
Well, sorry, the dog is having a moment in the back here, but that's see, that's what I like about the rock community, and I seem to get a bigger sense of that from the UK community, is that you all stick together.
Well, you know what, everybody, because we all, especially bands like Thunder and the Dogs D'Amour, and all the bands, we all started off together. We all started off together, and we're still friends now. I mean, that's why Luke played Tyler. I've done so many Hot Knives. Me and Tyler from the Dogs D'Amour have a band called the Hot Knives, and we've done a few albums. And Tyler's just made me a new guitar. I mean, Tyler's one of my best friends, and so everybody has. It's not like what the American bands. I'm not. But then on the other hand, I've got so many friends from the American bands, like the LA Guns, Guns N' Roses. We toured with a lot, and everybody, And I do them rock. We do them rock cruises every year, out of Florida to the Bahamas and all that.
Well, I'll just say this. I mean, the American bands are lovely as well, but it seems to me that the American bands are always competing with the other bands. They have to be bigger, better, brighter. But whereas the UK bands seem to just be, hey, we're on a bill together. Let's hang out and have a good time. There doesn't seem to be, oh, Thunder put out a new album. I'm bastards. I got to do better. Like, there doesn't seem to be that, and that's what I like.
Not at all. Yeah. We all take the piss out. We all take the piss out of each other.
Yes. We
all have, especially the songwriting and everything like that. We're always like, Danny goes, Luke goes to me, he says, "Oh, you've mentioned heart too many times in your songs." And I says, "Hey," I says, "excuse me, how many doors have you walked through lately?" You know? He says, "I don't mention doors." I says, "Hold on a second, Luke, you've mentioned doors. You've walked through this door.
It's
It's
true.
And he went, "Oh my God, I do mention doors." And then I went, "Oh my God, I do mention heart."
Well, listen, now, what we need before it's all said and done is a Danny Bowes Spike duet on anything. I don't care what it is. It just
There's
needs to.
one.
Where?
There's one on YouTube. Sing "Stay With Me."
Oh yeah, on YouTube. But I mean, an original song on an album. We need that.
Yeah.
We need that.
I'll ask him. He loves Frankie Miller. We've sang together loads of times. We've sung in Iceland together. We sang everywhere together.
We need a recorded version. CD.
Yeah, I'll ask him.
There you go. There we go. As we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Paul.
And I will have this up in the next couple of weeks, and we'll keep promoting the band.
Will you do me a favour? Do me a favour and take all me stuttering out, will you?
Absolutely, I will do my best.
Okay. Make it sound good.
I'll
when I lost my train of thought and I'm going, what the fuck?
we will clean it up and give the fans the best. And I don't know if you got my text, but I sent one over. So let me know about Andy. But thank you for your time today. Absolutely gracious.
You too. God bless you.
You too.
When I come to Canada in the next few months, I'll give you a call.
Absolutely. Listen, we'll show you around Montreal, and one of my great friends is the top DJ in Hamilton, in Toronto, and happens to also be the top DJ in Montreal. He's in 3 markets.
Really?
Yeah, a guy named Jeremy White. He's Montreal's #1 on-air personality. He just started in July in Toronto and in Hamilton, so he does 3 shows a day in 3 markets.
Wow.
And we'll get him to spin some of your stuff too.
Yes, send him fortune.
Absolutely will do.
Yeah.
Consider it done. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Have a good day.
Hey, God bless you.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
God bless. Keep in touch. God bless. Bye.
Absolutely.